Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be talking about the 3 parts of the sales process. Now, when it comes to sales or selling, a lot of people think that the only part that they're going to learn about or that they need to focus on is the actual sales call, and that just is not the case. See, when it comes to sales and selling as a whole, we need to look at what causes people to make decisions, what causes influence, and what causes people to actually go and buy, which we looked at in the Secrets of Sales Psychology. And we realized that there are 8 principles of influence, and there are different things that cause people to actually go and make that purchase, make that buying decision. And so when you look at that, you go, okay, where do all of those things fall? If we know that we have 8 principles of persuasion or influence and persuasion, we got to look at that and goes, okay, so where in the part of the sales process can those things be inserted? And if they can be inserted there, then guess what? That's going to be part of our sales process. And when you really look at the entire sales process as a whole, you'll recognize that there's 3 core parts that we need to focus on and that we're going to be covering in this training program. All right, so I want to go through what those 3 things are and then show you that you're actually going to have these principles of influence and persuasion inserted in all 3 of these places, and we'll go into that a little bit further. All right, so let's dive in. What are the 3 parts of the sales process? Well, part number 1 is your pipeline / your traffic. All right, this is who you're going to be selling to, right? Like, you've got to have somebody to sell to. In order to have someone to sell to, you need a pipeline, you need traffic, you need people. You can't just sell to no one, right? Like, there's got to be somebody there. Now, one of the things that I like about Grant Cardone is the fact that Grant Cardone really truly understands that, you do need a pipeline. You need to have that full. You need to have that going. I don't obviously agree with some of his sales tactics and the high pressure that he does in there, but one thing that he understands better than almost anyone out there is, hey, you need someone to sell to. This is where the marketing is done, and we'll go into that when we talk about understanding the buyer, but hey, this is where you bring awareness to what it is that you're doing, all right? This is where you get the people. This is where you warm them up, and this is who you're going to be selling to. If you don't have a pipeline, if you don't have traffic, if you don't have people to sell to, you're never going to go out and be able to make sales, all right? So this is going to include things like paid ads, organic posts, or value content. This will include things like networking, and basically inbound and outbound marketing. Okay, so these are the things that are going to be falling under this category of filling your pipeline and having traffic to be able to come to your offer, to your sales call, and actually go and be able to convert someone into a paying customer. Okay, number 2, this is going to be your sales conversion process. Okay, your sales conversion process or system, whatever you want to call it. This is going to be the process of taking this traffic, this people over here in this pipeline, and actually converting them into a paying customer. All right, so however that can be done. Now, there's multiple different ways to go about doing that, right? I mean, any process that you can come up with from taking traffic that's now aware of what it is that you're doing and then converting them to giving you money, that's really what we're talking about here. And I'm going to give you some examples. We're specifically going to be focusing on a couple of them here in this training program, but I want to give you just a couple different examples of what that might be. The first one is going to be your typical sales call. All right, so on the phone, whenever you're talking to someone, when you're having that conversation with them, obviously this is a form of doing that. So they go through. Now, I'm not specifically just talking about the sales call, right? I'm talking about the entire sales call process. So maybe this is, they pick a time, they fill out an application, they go through a pre-qualification process, and then they actually get on the phone with you and you sell them, okay? That would be one way to do it. The other way would be in-person meetings. right? So like maybe they have to, buy a ticket to the meeting. Maybe maybe they're buying a ticket to the meeting. Maybe you're just meeting them out for lunch. Maybe you're going to them. Wherever it is that you're meeting them, there should be a pre-qualification process there. And we're going to dive into this sales conversion process later on. So don't worry about the whole details of how it all works because we'll get to that. But like any time where you're meeting them in person in a face-to-face type setting, that would be part of the sales conversion process there as well. Another one might be webinars. Now, we're not going to talk a whole lot about webinars in this training program, but you're probably familiar with them. In fact, you might have even watched one to get into this. And this is basically an automated version of this sales conversion process where I don't have to talk to you one-on-one, or that person doesn't have to talk to you, the person that's coming from that pipeline one-on-one. They're talking to them in a group setting or in an automated setting via a webinar. But webinars are only going to be able to come after we are good at sales calls and we are good at in-person meetings and really, really understand our customer well. One of the big differences between sales and marketing, which we're going to get to in a later video, is understanding that sales, you get to handle all these objections and know their pain points and stuff in real time. Marketing, you don't get to do that in real time. So usually you got to get really good at sales calls and in-person meetings and things first before you're going to have success on a webinar because you're not going to know their objections unless you know them well, okay? And then the fourth one could be workshops. So this could be workshops or conferences, events that you'd be hosting. This could be as little as 3 or 4 people. In fact, when I did life and health insurance and sold there, we would do these workshops, or a lot of these insurance people would put on little workshops where they'd invite out 4 or 5 or 6 local business owners, and we would talk to them about life and health insurance and explain exactly what we do and how it works and everything like that. And we provide them a lot of really good information. And I like to think of a workshop as more or less like an in-person or a face-to-face webinar. You're typically in a workshop, not just dealing with someone one-on-one. Typically, it's a group setting type deal, but still it falls under this category of the sales conversion process of converting someone from your pipeline, your traffic, into an actual paying customer. So in this training, Selling Confidence, we're going to be focusing primarily on sales calls and in-person meetings. Sales calls are my favorite simply because, when we're selling online and specifically on social media, a lot of what's going to take place is going to be in the sales calls there, but all these things would potentially apply to this. All right? Then number 3, the last part of the sales process is an irresistible offer. All right? You need to have a good product or service to sell. And when you're selling in a sales conversation or when you're selling a product, you're not just selling the product, you're actually selling an offer. And we're going to talk about making your product or your service an offer and productizing your services and then building a really solid offer out of that. And when you have an irresistible offer, I'm talking about something that goes and solves all of their pain points. It brings them all of their desires and it handles all of their objections, okay? That's kind of the definition of an irresistible offer. And so let me write those things down here. First and foremost, it is going to achieve their desires, okay? It's going to move them away from pain, away from pain. It is going to handle the objections. And, it should exceed expectations. And it should give them a reason to act now. Act now. Okay? These are all the parts of an irresistible offer that it should contain. And like I said, we're going to go into this a little bit further. But if you have a really bad offer, you're going to have a really hard time selling it no matter how good your marketing is and filling your traffic or filling your pipeline with traffic, no matter how good your sales conversion process is, because part of how we go through and handle objections is by pointing to what the offer does. Part of going through and getting them really sold on the fact that they're moving towards their desire is tied directly to the offer. Part of moving away from the pain. This is all these things are tied to the offer. And if we want good testimonials, if we want social proof, if we want consistency, if we want results, we need to be able to go through and exceed expectations. And all those things are part of what? They're part of the principles of influence and persuasion, right? And then, of course, another one is giving them a reason to act now. This is urgency. This is another principle of influence. Or principle of influence and persuasion. So if you look at all three of these things, you'll realize that all of them have areas where we can start to insert these principles of influence and persuasion. Here in the pipeline and the traffic, we're going to start making them aware. This is going to cover things like authority and social proof, consistency, trust, likability. All these things are going to start happening here in the pipeline, the traffic side of things. In the sales conversion process, this is going to cover a lot of those things, reasons to act now, authority, trust, likingness. I mean, a lot of these things are going to happen here. And then finally, actually in our offer, obviously we just talked about that, consistency, scarcity, urgency, or reason to act now, moving away or towards pain, which would be material self-interest. I mean, a lot of these principles of influence are going to be inserted in all three of these categories. So we're not just looking at the sales call when we're talking about sales. We're looking at the process of a whole, the three-part process of all of sales as a whole. Because why? Because these are the three parts that all contain principles of influence and persuasion, which we know that if we get those 8 principles of influence and persuasion in our sales process, then we're going to be able to convince someone to ultimately make that purchase and sell our offer. All right? So this is very important to understand all three of these. We're going to dive into each one of these things further, but this part here, number 1, pipeline and traffic, this is to, in fact, let me just write this on top of here for you. This is to make people aware, right? Make people aware. This is to actually make the sale, right? Obviously. Hey, and this is to be able to deliver, right? Make aware, make the sale, and then deliver accordingly and exceed expectations in the process of everything. Get this down. If you understand these 3 parts of what it is that we're talking about, I promise you're going to be able to sell pretty much anything to anyone. And when you have problems in your sales process and you go, man, we're not making enough sales, or, oh man, I don't know why we are not able to scale our business. What you can do is you can just look at this and go, okay, we know that all of sales is going to fall into one of these 3 categories. So let's look at it from an overview, bird's eye view and go, is it category 1, 2, or 3 where the problem would be? Well, if we've got tons and tons of leads, then we're going to move on to our sales process. Is our sales process happening? If we've got thousands of leads coming in and only a couple leads coming out, then we know the problem is going to be here, right? Whereas if this is going, let's say we only have 50 leads coming in and we've got 40 sales coming out, then we know this is probably great, but then it would be this one that has a problem, right? And so we'd have to come back here and start to dive down in and analyze further this. Maybe we've got lots of leads coming in, we've got lots of people going and sitting on the sales call, but we have terrible feedback back. We're not getting any testimonials. We have very little social proof. That's probably because our offer isn't very good. It doesn't contain all of the elements, and people may be interested, but they're not ultimately having success with it because your offer is not a good offer. So anytime you're having problems, you just look at those 3 pieces to the puzzle and go, which one is the bottleneck? Drill down further until you identify what that is, change that, and you're going to be able to solve your business problems much more quickly and be able to scale much faster. Now, obviously, there's other parts of businesses, customer service and internal systems and hiring and whatnot, but this is for the sales process side of things. This is where we're going to be focusing on here, and this is what you really need to understand. All right? If you have any questions on this, please let us know, and I will see you on the next lesson.